Economically motivated adulteration is, as defined in the way we use it, is that when something of value is either diluted or removed and substituted with something of lesser value, but in a way that's concealed so that it's to the economic benefit to the seller, but to the economic and potential health detriment to the buyer.
Hello, plant people. Hello, my herbal friends. And welcome to another edition of Everything You Did Not Know About Herbalism here on Herbal Radio, brought to you, of course, by Mountain Rose Herbs. I am your host, Tommy Navarre, and I am so happy to host this show to, bring you along on another wonderful herbal adventure. And we've got a great one for you today. I've got Mark Blumenthal on the show. Mark is the founder and the executive director of the American Botanical Council. And he has been in herbalism for a very long time. Really one of the founders of modern herbalism. And his work has just been tremendous throughout the years. So American Botanical Council is really kind of a watchdog group, making sure that the products that are being brought to you are of the highest quality. They're a leading organization in education, and really on botanical adulterants prevention, that sort of thing. And so he has spent a lifetime ensuring that the herbs that we buy are the highest quality, and it was an honor to be able to talk to him. He's really just an outstanding person and so knowledgeable. Kind of intimidating, to be around that, to speak with somebody who not only has been in this game for a very long time, but has sort of set the pace of what this game is, and he's just an incredible person on top of that. Just a lovely, nice, caring human being. And so I really had a fantastic conversation. And it was one that I've been wanting to have for a long time. I think that there's probably, I don't know how many people, a dozen more people have recommended, hey, you need to have Mark on the show. He really is someone who's going to be able to educate the listener, and someone who has a lot to talk about. And so, and they were not wrong. It was amazing. So, so without further ado, let's listen in on my conversation with Mark.
Well, I can't say that I'm excited, but I'm grateful to be included.
Stephen was very happy that you were going to be on. He had been talking to me about having you on for like a year now. So
Yeah.
and it just kind of works out that I was like, oh, we got a good slot here. Let's bring
Well,
on Mark.
well, you got take a year. You got to the bottom of the list, and then now you can start over
We
again.
got we got to we're like, all right, I guess. No. We're super excited. Yeah, because again, Steven, he says that you're going to be the best guest that we've ever had on Herbal Radio. So no pressure.
Well, I don't know about that, but I don't know who your other guests are. But let's put it this way: I like to talk about things that I like most
Yeah,
people, and
right.
herbs and medicinal plants, and the work that we do here at the American Botanical Council is
Yeah.
something that is my full-time passion. So
How long
yeah.
have you been doing this?
Well, I've, I've been a vegetarian for 57 years. That's how I
Okay.
started. So
Yeah.
the, the journey for me into herbal medicine started with becoming a vegetarian in the spring of '68 when I was graduating from college.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started an herb company in '74.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been 51 years ago. I did
Wow.
a wholesale herb company with a friend in He dropped out after a year, and I built up the business for about 12 years.
Uh-huh.
And during that time, I got involved with starting a newsletter called Herb News for a small fledgling trade association that I helped with other colleagues in the industry. We started it was called the Herb Trade Association back in 1976. So that's going to be 50 years next year that I've been involved with helping to helping to co-create infrastructure in the herbal industry and the herbal community.
Yeah.
So I did that. I was president of the association for 1 year. The association a few years later went downhill, and some of us got together and started a new organization called the American Herbal Products Association, or
Mm,
APA, back
right.
in 1982,
Okay.
which is the major industry association, trade association for the herbal products industry. And I was on the founding board of APA back in the day. And during that time, I started a newsletter with a friend of mine named Rob McCaleb up in Boulder, who was head of research at Celestial Seasonings,
Hmm.
an herbal newsletter called Herbalgram, kind of like a telegram, but it was an herbal and Herbalgram, get it? And that
Yeah.
was 1983, because we also started the Herb Research Foundation, Rob and I.
Yeah.
And for 5 years, I published Herbalgram, both for the American Herbal Products Association, the industry group, and the Herb Research Foundation. And by 1988, after 5 years, and I got out of the herb business by that time, and what was my passion at that time was the Herbalgram and the newsletter.
Yeah.
And so I started ABC, the nonprofit American Botanical Council, as
Hmm.
a nonprofit vehicle to take Herbalgram, then the newsletter, for this Herb Industry Association and this research organization, and try to take this newsletter and fund it in a way through the nonprofit ABC and turn it into like a Scientific American for herbs. And that was my
Hmm.
vision: Scientific
Yeah.
American, National Geographic, compelling photography, credible articles, well researched, peer reviewed like a professional academic journal.
Yeah.
All,
Yeah. Right.
so
Right. Every
that's
time I think of Herbalgram, I always think of we put an ad out. We've always put ads in Herbalgram, and I remember this was probably 10 years ago, and we had some language in there that was very marketing based. It was a little heavy, probably a little heavy handed as far as us. I don't know whatever we were trying to say, and you pushed back. Herbalgram came and it was just like absolutely not. You can't prove that we probably said something like, the best industry, the best at, I don't know, sell herbal industry or whatever it be. You push back and you were just like, absolutely not. Like that's,
so
you can't say that in Herbalgram. And ever since then I've been like, wow, I really trust the integrity of Herbalgram. That's fantastic.
well. Thank you for that. I think to be more clear, we probably with some of our we treat our advertising as almost as if it's like editorial copy.
Hmm.
Uh, we don't let people get away with claims or statements that they cannot substantiate to our satisfaction.
Right.
Because I
Right.
don't want our readers to turn the page while they're reading an article about whatever, research or whatever, and see an ad, and have then them having to put up their BS detector, or go, oh wait a minute, it's an
Yeah,
ad.
absolutely.
We want people to feel like they can trust and have confidence in at least the statements being made by the companies, whether they're
Hmm.
promoting a product or a company or a service. And we're not very ad heavy. We're not a big advertising
Right.
driven
Right.
publication. And that's
Well, I
because,
really appreciated that. I
yeah,
mean, in marketing and brand, and what I do, there can be some hyperbolas,
it's called
you
puffery.
can do that. Yeah,
It's
exactly.
called
So
puffery.
right. You kind of build it up a little bit more than maybe what it is,
Yeah,
and
we're the,
you shut it down. So that was
yeah,
fantastic.
we're the greatest company. But here's the thing, Tommy. I, when I started with the herb industry and the herb movement over 50 years ago, the biggest problem I saw, that one of the biggest problems that herbs had, was credibility.
Mhm.
People saw them as, no disrespect, old wives' tales or just folklore. They said, that's folklore, it's not science. And it's
Yeah.
true that most of it was folklore. Most of it was, at the time, based on ethnobotany, the historical record, common cultural use, folk medicine, and there was very little human clinical research going on in the late
Mhm.
60s and the early 70s. That started in the 70s and 80s, mainly in Europe. Now it's all over the place. And what we wanted to do is try to establish a credibility for herbs as having legitimate use, not only in self-care, where it's primarily, but also in conventional healthcare, where appropriate. So we took on the mantle, ABC, as being American Botanical Council, a science-based herbal medicine research and education organization based on the
Hmm.
science, but at the same time, always appreciating and respecting the rich folkloric ethnobotanical tradition that has come down to us through
Hmm.
grandmother to granddaughter, going back centuries and millennia and beyond. And
Right.
that's kind of like maybe can help describe what our mission is about. We're about increasing the quality and the quantity of responsible information on how people can use herbs in a response, herbs and medicinal plants and fungi and phytomedicines and teas and all these natural products that come from plants or fungi,
Hmm.
how people can use them in a responsible way, but at the same time focusing toward the industry, because I come from the industry. I had an
Hmm.
industry organization, I had a company, and I helped start, as I mentioned, two trade associations, although I'm not directly involved with them. The first one is no longer in business, and APA now is 42 years old,
Hmm.
43 maybe. And the idea is to help support the consumer and the health professional and the researcher and the industry person by helping to communicate about problems that are in the supply chain, which we prefer to call value network, by the way, and that's a conversation we can have. So we
I
don't
like that.
don't oversimplify it as supply chain.
Yeah.
If we
Yeah.
want to come back to that one, that's a fun little 2 minute conversation. But at the same time, focusing on supply chain and value networks from a sustainability and conservation point of view. And we've been leaders and thought leaders in that area, but at the same time, dealing with accurate, responsible, honest marketing practices and labeling so that the ingredients in the products, the botanical or fungal ingredients in the products, are authentic. They
Hmm.
are what the label says they are. And that is,
Right.
unfortunately, a problem that has plagued humankind for hundreds and even thousands of years.
Hmm.
Ever since the beginning of civilized or uncivilized society, of trade and economics, people have cheated, and that's
Yeah.
we've
Yeah.
documented. People cheat.
Right.
Fortunately,
Right.
it's a fact of life. And
Hmm.
so we started, and you probably know about this. We started almost 15 years ago this program called the Botanical Adulterants Prevention Program
Hmm.
to help educate people in industry, the quality control people, the purchasing agents, the regulatory people in various companies about what herbs are subject to adulteration and fraud. And we could talk about how that's done
Yeah.
and how they can prevent that from happening by not being sure that they don't buy the wrong stuff. What analytical methods in the laboratory do or don't work to detect this kind of adulteration of this herb or that
Hmm.
kind of adulteration of that herb, so that we can help improve the chances that consumers are buying products that are not only authentic, but at the end of the day really work and provide the expectation that the person wants it, why they bought it in the first place. People buy herbal products for one reason mainly, and it's because aside from herbal teas that taste good, people buy herbal products for the benefits, for the therapeutic and the
Sure.
health, the nutritional benefits. That's the
Sure.
point. So they should be able to deliver to some degree, depending on what the company's marketing for. So that's been a big focus of ABC, is not just the science, but also helping companies and helping the industry. And when I say the industry, let's be clear, I'm talking about the responsible element of the industry, the companies who are like yours, like Mountain Rose,
Hmm.
companies that are owned by responsible, ethical people who care
Hmm.
about the quality of the raw material coming in, how that was accessed, and the sustainability through the supply network or the value network, how it's processed, how it's labeled, what kind of claims you can make that are responsible
Right.
and reasonable and appropriate, and care about the results to the end user, the consumer. That's the
Right.
responsible industry. And there's lots of good people and lots of good companies that are responsible in the herb trade. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, like other industries, you have people out there that are just looking for the fast buck or $1, and they cut corners,
Mm-hmm.
and they buy the lowest priced material they can get, which may or may not be okay depending on the material, but they
Yeah.
sometimes will cut corners on the quality control requirements and all those kind of things. So what we have done is set up probably the largest program in the world dealing with helping responsible members of the industry identify and prevent adulteration and fraud so that they can sell products that have value and they give consumers beneficial value.
What percentage do you feel? Because I feel like there's a lot of bad actors out there right now. I, and maybe that's not true. It just feels that way. It just feels like there's a lot of, we're getting a lot of, you're seeing a lot of these products coming in out of China, and I don't know what it, as far as, is it organic? Are these products that are coming out of China? I know you hear these stories that you can just buy an organic, certification from China. Are you seeing that as well? Are you?
So, yeah, that's a great question. First of all, I'm not a China basher.
Mhm.
Uh, Clear, and
I'm
there's
not either. Right.
I,
Yes. No.
I get it. I get it, but there's a reason to be concerned about items coming in from China and other places. I'll just say there's some very good quality material coming out of China. There's some very good quality companies over there. And yet, if you're a company over here and you're having somebody produce something in China, it's always advisable to have your person on the ground when they're running your product to ensure that your ingredient is what you claim it to be and what you bought
Mhm.
and what you want, etc. I mean, that's just good diligence and good business practice. There's
Right.
some good quality stuff coming out of China, and there's also stuff coming out of China that is not good quality and it's fraudulent. Uh, you asked me how do I feel about how much of this is happening. I tell you, I don't have feelings about it. I have information that I've tried to gain about it. So that's really,
Sure.
and no
Sure.
disrespect to languaging, but this is not a feeling issue. Other than you can feel sometimes outraged or frustrated or disappointed or angry
So
when
you
you
have
see.
really like analytical evidence of this
Yeah,
happening. Like you're like
we,
actual. Oh, fantastic.
yeah. What we have done, and nobody else in the world has ever done this, to our knowledge, because we've published in peer-reviewed journals.
Hmm.
And the journals would not accept our paper if there's somebody else that already published on this, or they would say, well, um, we have done systematic reviews of the herbs that we have published on in 14 years through our Botanical Adulterants Prevention Program,
Hmm.
known as by the acronym BAPP with two P's, BAPP, kind of like a comic book thing, but it's not. It's not funny. We have done a systematic review of 6 of the most popular herbs that are also highly adulterated. So that would be black cohosh, I think echinacea, elder, ginkgo, turmeric. That may be 5, but there's I think it was 6 herbs. And we looked at all the analytical research published in the scientific literature on those specific herbs, which we had already
Hmm.
combed before when we published our bulletins on those herbs, showing how they're adulterated into it. The question is, we can prove that herbs are being adulterated, certain herbs. The
Hmm.
question people always ask me, like you're asking in effect, is how much? How much
Yeah.
of the stuff out there is adulterated?
Yeah.
Well, it's very hard to answer that
Okay.
because you have to really have a good answer. You have to really review all the herbs on the market and test them and see how much are meet label claim and which ones don't. By the way, sidebar that's relevant. Back in the '90s, before I started, when I already been running ABC then. By then, about 8 years or so, we started the ginseng evaluation program. And that's because I used to be involved with ginseng with my wholesale herb business when I had it. And I was concerned about fraudulent ginseng being sold back then in the late '70s, early '80s. So, 10 years later, in the '90s, I was able to raise enough money to test 500 commercial ginseng products sold in North America, including Canada.
Hmm.
Nobody, to my knowledge, has ever done that before or since.
Hmm.
I mean, 500 products, that's several years of analytical testing in laboratories, and we
Sure.
used 2 university laboratories, and we even developed an appropriate laboratory analytical method for detecting ginseng or its adulterants,
Hmm.
which I believe that method is the basis for the USP method for the United States Pharmacopoeia. The point was, you just can't go take stuff and throw it in a black box and get an answer. You have to know how to test for it. You have to know
Yeah.
what methods do or don't work. It
Right.
gets complicated. I don't want to make this conversation complicated, but I'm just being honest about what it's about. It's just not
Yeah.
just a black box thing and you get an answer. So we tested 500 commercial ginseng products, published on part of it, and we didn't get a chance to finish the publication because then 9/11 happened, and the
Mm.
money for nonprofit sector just vaporized for about a
Yeah.
year. Very
Right.
hard to run our nonprofit, and we had to drop the program. And that part of the at that point the program was about collating all the information and publishing it. We only published 1 out of 4 papers that we expected. The bottom line, though, was that we found that about 25% of that 500 ginseng products, over 100
Mhm.
out of 500, 100, 125, were either somehow mislabeled
Mhm.
or they were fraudulent. They were adulterated with the wrong stuff, or they had been extracted. And it was this ginseng powder, ginseng root powder that didn't contain ginsenosides because they'd been extracted, and the extract was used over here, and somebody was just selling the mark, the MARC, what it's called,
Sure.
the,
Right.
the totally spent powder. So about
Uh-huh.
25%. Now, getting back to our current publication that we published last year, how many herbal products are adulterated? What's the percentage, etc.? And I'm sorry, I've got a landline ringing, and I'm
Oh,
sorry
one
about that. Right.
not too
Oh,
many
sorry.
landlines anymore.
You know, my wife loves her landline. Sorry, I should probably go take it off the hook, shouldn't I? So that we don't have this problem. So going to this paper that we published in a peer-reviewed journal about a year ago on the 5 or 6 herbs that we looked at. We looked at all the literature on that published that we'd looked at before and anything that had been published since then.
Mhm.
And on some of them, we found that about 20 or 25%, 27% of the samples tested in, 30 samples of a product were tested in one laboratory and they published a paper on it. And then 15 samples of that product were published in it by a different laboratory at a different pharmacy school or somewhere else, and they published a paper on it. Bottom
Mhm.
line is we found that 22 to 27% of some of these popular herbs were being adulterated as documented
Mhm.
by the research that was in the public domain, that was published in the scientific literature. And more alarming is in the last 10 years or so, up to 80% of the ginkgo products that were
Really?
tested in the last 10 years were seen to be adulterated. Ginkgo is a very highly
Wow.
adulterated area. And there, of course, there are some companies that make excellent ginkgo products.
Mhm.
There's, I'm not going to name brands, but there's some really good quality ginkgo products, especially including the one that was the original ginkgo product that everybody has emulated and on which most of the clinical research is done. But that seems to be one area where there's a significant amount of adulteration and fraud, internationally speaking. So
Mm.
when people say, "Well, how
So when
much
you
we?"
say that they're adulterated, so are
Yeah,
they purposely adulterated, or
yeah,
are they just not using, um, the highest quality? So are they getting it? It's
yeah.
not all ginkgo, let's say. It has
But
other plants that are mixed in, and
no,
that's causing the adulteration, or is it something that they're just purposely
well,
sort of,
in a
you know
non-ginkgo botanical, it could be what you just described. There's different things. There's different ways that we could define adulteration.
Mhm.
But let's go back and let's clarify our terms, because I'm assuming
Mhm.
that your your listeners, is this audio or video or
They're
both?
nerds. Yeah, no, this is gonna be video, so, and audio, but yeah, they're people listening are plant nerds, so they're gonna want this clarified. They're gonna want this
All
to
right.
understand it.
The term used at FDA and at the United States Pharmacopoeia and is EMA, economically motivated adulteration.
Ah, there it is. Okay.
We can accept that once in a blue moon, somebody makes a mistake and mislabels something or puts a bag of X with 9 bags of Y, and that gets
Mhm.
mixed in by mistake. Human error happens, but more, and that's why it's really important to properly and adequately train your people. It's a necessary part of GMP,
Mhm.
federally mandated good manufacturing practices. Is proper training of your people that are involved in a plant, record keeping. All these things are very important. So what happens with economically motivated adulteration is this is not an accident. This is not a one-off because we see it consistently in samples after sample. It can't be an accident. It's happening because, and it's economically motivated adulteration, as defined in the way we use it, is that when something of value is either diluted or removed and substituted with something of lesser value,
Mm-hmm.
but in a way that's concealed so that it's to the economic benefit to the seller, but to the economic and potential health detriment to the buyer. So it's
Mm-hmm.
concealed because if you set it on your label, this product contains, ginseng, like
Right.
ginseng root extract 25 or 30%, and ginseng leaf extract 40 or 50%, and therefore the total ginsenoside content is so many percent or so many milligrams.
Mm-hmm.
That would be possibly an honest product because you're telling people that you're fortifying the ginsenoside level of your ginseng extract capsule with ginsenosides that come not from the roots but also from the leaf, and that's
Yeah.
actually what happens. People do sell ginseng root extract, that's how it's labeled.
Mm-hmm.
But the ginsenoside, these compounds that are particular to ginseng and are responsible for a lot of its pharmacological activity, the ginsenoside is relatively high because they've added, but didn't disclose the fact that they've added from the cheap throwaway leaf, which also contains some of these ginsenosides in different ratios than the root.
Sure.
And you can determine analytically if ginseng leaf extract's been added by looking at the eight high performance liquid chromatography and other ways to see the ratios of these compounds.
Yeah.
Point being that if you disclose it, it's not adulteration. Maybe it's a new kind of herbal product, ginseng root and ginseng leaf extract. Okay, that's fine. You're being honest about it. But if you're just calling it ginseng root extract and the person
Mm-hmm.
buying it thinks it's just ginseng root extract because they've read about ginseng for so many years,
Yeah.
it's a fraudulent product because it's got some leaf extract in there or whatever. So the point is there's ways of, of adulteration and
Mm-hmm.
fraud by substituting things, adding things, spiking things, or diluting things. We published an article in our journal Herbalgram, our peer-reviewed journal, which you talked about a moment ago. Last summer, the summer of 24, we published, I think, the first ever article on the subject of excessive dilution of herbal extracts.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people will dilute an extract with maltodextrin as an excipient. Now you need excipient. Excipients are like processing aids when you're putting an extract or a powdered extract, and so it's
Mm-hmm.
dry, and you're running it through a machine so you can make tablets or capsules. And sometimes, depending on the herb and the chemistry of that herb, these things can get gummed up. They're real easy. They're gummy. They don't flow well. They're hygroscopic. They attract moisture.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to add some dicalcium phosphate or some maltodextrin for flowing agents and processing aids. And this is typically done in factories that make dietary supplements. There's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with it. It's normal. It's natural in many cases. And maltodextrin is a corn-derived product.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that sometimes the maltodextrin is in such a high level that the way the companies will sell the extract, it makes it look like this is a very high concentrated extract when it's actually a relatively low concentration of extract because they've put so much of this filler in there, not
Mm-hmm.
just for the processing aid, beyond what is needed to process the capsule or tablet. And so this is a problem too, excessive dilution to the point sometimes where there may not be enough of the herb that you think you're taking, enough of the chemistry of that herb to provide you the expected therapeutic or nutritional benefit that you're looking for. So
Mm-hmm.
these are problems that we try to point out, not because we're naysayers, not because we want to pee on the parade, so to speak. If anybody's out there banging the drum for herbs and for the herbal agenda and for the
Right.
idea
Right.
for research, etc., and what the research shows, it's ABC. We've been doing this for a long time, almost 40 years, and Herbalgram's over 40 years old, and we're constantly putting out positive information, reporting on the positive clinical studies that show that many traditional herbs are safe and effective for
Mm-hmm.
a variety of uses. But the problem is at the same time, there needs to be a focus on how do you ensure to the consumer that she or he is getting a product that's authentic, that they expect to buy, So we started this adulteration program. We're getting awards for it. We're getting an award next week. This is July of 2025, time
Hmm.
stamping. We're getting an award from Nutrition Business Journal for our services to the industry. It's not our first award. We've gotten 3 or 4 from various herb and supplement industry magazines, publications, organizations, because what we've created with the Botanical Adulterants Prevention Program is the largest nonprofit consortium in the world
Hmm.
dealing with adulteration and fraud in the herbal marketplace globally. It's a global issue.
Yeah.
And we're doing it in such a way with our friends at the American Herbal Pharmacopoeia, Roy Upton, and Dr. Ikhlas Khan at the University of Mississippi's National Center for Natural Products Research, which is an FDA funded center for excellence for testing herb and herbal materials. That's the national center for it. There are
Hmm.
partners in this. We're out there helping increase the quality of herbal products because companies tell us that they set their specifications for their ingredients by looking at what we've published about adulteration. If we have published on a particular ingredient, they will revisit their specification for ingredient X if we've
Hmm.
published on. And sometimes they've revised their specification, and then they find out their current supplier can no longer meet that revised specification, which means they end up changing suppliers, presumably for a better quality product.
Hmm.
Because, as we like to say in the herbal field, price is not a specification, and it shouldn't be.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, with many companies, price becomes the predominant specification as to what ingredient they're going to buy. They're going to buy
Sure.
the cheapest material, and you can't always
Right.
trust
Right. What's the consequence in for these companies when they end up breaking the rules? I mean, obviously you're a watchdog group and you're out there, you're testing and you're putting out this, but
them. We're
what
not
are the
testing.
consequences?
So to be clear, we're not doing the testing. We're publishing on already published tests that are in the scientific literature,
Okay.
and
Okay.
also tests that are also revealed to us by third-party testing labs and also in-house testing labs.
So with the ginkgo, for instance, that's not you actually doing the testing. That
Not-
was you.
we're looking at published literature in
Okay.
the scientific literature that's already
Yeah.
out there. We
Yeah.
just collate. We're the ones we collated it all, looked at it, and looked
Yeah.
at. And so, because we're not a testing organization, we don't have
Right.
laboratory. We're associated with the University of Mississippi, which is, as I said, the FDA-funded Center of Excellence for testing for botanical material. But they're
Hmm.
not testing for the adulterants program. Although, because of their partnership with us, they will sometimes generate some new tests that are generated from BAPP, from the research we've done, and then they've gone out and published in scientific journals the results of those tests.
Hmm.
And our chief science officer and the director of BAPP, Dr. Stefan Gaffner, he's a PhD in the area of analytical chemistry, and he's also a pharmacist. He's one of the co-authors of those papers. So we have actually stimulated testing by a very reputable laboratory uh, that is government funded
Hmm.
at the University of Mississippi, and the papers that are in the scientific literature we're co-authors with it. So
Hmm.
we are involved with that, but we are not a testing program. We're really an
Okay.
educational advocacy program.
Right. So back to the question, the consequences for these companies that are obviously putting in adulterants or they're f- falsifying records. However, that is we as
Well,
consumers, what do we do?
well, that's the hard part. Hopefully, you buy from companies that you trust.
Hmm.
Hopefully, you buy from companies that you've already had good experiences with. Hopefully, you can buy from companies that do clinical research on their botanicals, because usually companies that are willing to invest in clinical research are generally companies that are making authentic products.
Hmm.
You also want to support companies who are uh, reviewed by third party organizations like NSF or USP, where they
Hmm.
come in and do audits of the warehouse and the facilities and the production facilities, and often will actually, for one step further, they'll do audits and testing of the product so that the product has a seal on it from, say, NSF, just to use the largest one, and those generate confidence. At the same time, I will say there's many good companies that are reliable that don't
Yeah.
have third-party seals on them, and that are very reliable. And I know the owners of these companies, and I use some of them myself. So that's not looking for some of these seals is not necessarily the only criteria to
Right.
go for. And I can't give named because that's, if somebody see people say, give me a list of 10 or 20 or 30 companies that you
Mhm.
trust. Well, then what happens to the 31st?
True. True. I think that, well, I'm on the board of Cornucopia Institute, and we put out the organic, this list of organic companies. We put out a list of independent companies, and these, we, as a watchdog group, are able to look at these companies and provide this list to the consumers and
Right.
say, hey, we're doing the hard work, we're doing the heavy lifting on this, and so you don't have to. You can just go out and trust that these companies are doing the right thing. Now, there are other companies that are not on that list that should be, and there's maybe a companies on that list that are, maybe they shouldn't be, as far as they're kind of pulling the wool over people's eyes. But has Appa ever thought about doing that as far as supplement, or as far as botanical companies?
Well, I can't speak for APA, but I can speak for ABC.
ABC. Yeah.
I'm a founder of APA, and have a relationship with them, but we're not
Right.
APA. We're not, and
Right.
by to be clear, we're not a trade association. We're an independent, nonprofit research and education organization. And the answer is yes. At one point, we thought about doing a testing program, and my board declined the idea because they did not want to get involved with any litigation that might come up,
Hmm.
because some companies have in-house lawyers and they can make your life, very, very challenging. So that's when we came up with the idea. Okay, well, if we're not going to go test products, let's at least educate people as to what's going on
Yeah.
out there.
Yeah.
What kind of
Right.
adulteration and fraud is happening? How do you
Hmm.
detect it? And also another paper that we published that nobody else has done either. This is the first of its type. 2 years ago, we published a paper showing which analytical methods used in laboratories
Hmm.
that the adulterators are targeting with the certain types of chemical adulteration, mainly of extracts, so that if you use that method only in your lab or in a contract lab
Hmm.
to authenticate a material that you're going to buy and put into a capsule, and that's the only method you're going to use, they're gaming the fraudsters are gaming the system, and they figured out which is the most prevalent analytical method or methods, and they've
Hmm.
adulterated their material, Tom, in such a way that it'll pass the test even though it's fraudulent.
Right.
So you have to use multiple testing methods, not just one. You have to use what's called orthogonal testing, which you have use microscopy if it's a powdered herb, or if it's an extract, you have to use several chemical tests or whatever, and maybe even genetic material, depending on what it is. And
Hmm.
nobody's ever published on this before. And the thesis is that just testing and throwing it in the black box, so to speak, as we talked about it at the top of the hour, it doesn't work, because the fraudsters know in each category what the prevalent analytical tests are that are being used by industry, and they
Yeah.
focus on that test and figure out how they're going to game the system and basically invalidate the test and fool it. They're going to trick the test. They're tricksters. They're fraudsters. They're tricksters. Let's call them what they are. They're criminals. They're
Yeah.
breaking the law. They're fraudulent. They're being fraudulent, and the consumer ends up without getting the benefit that they expected. And sometimes that can be a serious issue because, as we know, many people use herbal dietary supplements and other nutritional based dietary supplements in lieu of conventional pharmaceutical drugs if they've
Sure.
got a serious disease. Their
Sure.
naturopath, or maybe their functional medicine doctor, whomever, has said, you can take we can go for, this drug is prescribed for this, but you can take these four supplements, including this herbal stuff,
Hmm.
and,
Hmm.
and I've had success with it. And many of us, myself included, will prefer the latter. We'll take the
Hmm.
natural supplements, even if we have to take more of them,
Yeah.
instead of synthetic pharmaceutical drug. And I'm not bashing the pharmaceutical industry. I'm just talking about what people are
Right.
doing, by the millions in this country for various natural and philosophical and other reasons. And so, um, when these things don't work because they're not what they claim to be,
Hmm.
they may not produce a toxicological or an adverse reaction from a safety point of view, because most of the adulteration that we've documented, here's the good news, if you want, most of the adulteration that we've documented does not become a safety issue.
Hmm.
It doesn't cause a lot of adverse effects, but it is a potential health issue if they don't work especially in cases where people are using them to help treat or help
Right.
manage various kinds of potentially serious or actually serious illnesses. That becomes a health issue, and and that concerns me because I want people to get benefits from natural medicine, and then therefore the natural medicine needs to be authentic, and that's what we focus on. That's
So
one of ABC's focuses. It's not our only
yeah,
focus. We're involved with sustainability. We're involved with video. We have a lot of things going on. By the way,
right.
we have a program called Herb TV. And I invite your listeners and viewers to check out uh, Herb TV. We've got over 200 herbal education videos there, and
Fantastic.
maybe there's some way that we can do some cross
Wouldn't that be
marketing
fun? That'd be
because
great.
we have Herb TV is something that's a major new project for ABC because
Hmm.
we reach people through video aside from our peer-reviewed publications.
Hmm. So I do have a question. So let's talk to the consumer.
Hmm.
Let's what's your advice? Let's say somebody is like, "Hey, I want to go the herbal route. I want to maximize the efficacy of, this supplement, or I want that effect, right? I want to get that. What do they do? How do they know that what they're taking is right?"
Well, that's a good question, obviously. Well, and good. We talk about herbs as being folk medicine because it's the people's medicine. People should already know what their grandmother told them if they can remember that, or what if
Hmm.
they herbs. One way is to go to a naturopath or a qualified herbalist or an acupuncturist or even a knowledgeable pharmacist or health professional, accredited health professional who knows about herbal medicine. It's hard to
Hmm.
find that. And so, although naturopaths are there, then they're trained in this area in natural
Hmm.
medicine, etc. But most physicians are not, unfortunately, because they don't have the training in medical school, and they have a negative, often unfortunately, a negative view about this stuff, mainly out of ignorance because they don't have the training, they don't have the education.
Hmm.
So, getting help depending on the situation. Some things are not always self treatable. It depends on
Sure.
if something is treatable. I mean, if you have an over the counter, like you would use over the counter medicines, upset stomach and headache. I mean, different things can be used. Herbs can be used for them, and a whole lot of things. Ginger for motion, preventing motion sickness, etc.
Hmm.
I'm a big believer in the use of adaptogens. By the way, I've been
Hmm.
taking ginger for over 50 years and rhodiola for over 30, and I'm an adaptogenic kind of guy. And I like the way it keeps my energy going. And that's a proactive thing. That's the nice thing about, we have to talk about herbs too. Herbs could be used not just to treat something, but it's also to help increase and improve the flow of energy in your life and your immunity and from all kinds of things. And so, I'm a big believer in promoting adaptogens, whether it's ginseng or ashwagandha or rhodiola or whatever, by the way. The other thing is people should become an expert if you can about one or two herbs that you think might be appropriate for you or that might be
Sure.
recommended to you. Do as much reading and as much as possible. The problem there is, you know, you can't trust everything you find on the web. There's a
Hmm.
lot of stuff on the web that has got a commercial agenda, whether
Right.
they're out front about it or not. And you cannot there and the information is designed to sell you a product at the end of the day, sometimes by going through a 20 or 30-minute video and wasting a lot of your time,
Right.
unfortunately, or
Yeah.
whatever. And it may or may not be a good product. I don't know. Depends on what it is. We're herbalgram.org, by the way. We're
Hmm.
the American Botanical Council nonprofit, herbalgram.org. Our information is not commercial. It's we have a lot of commercial supporters and members for to whom we are grateful, but they don't set the agenda. They don't have editorial control over our publication, as you pointed out earlier. We even edit advertising when it comes
Yeah.
to materials. We won't accept advertising if it doesn't have claims that are not adequately substantiated, or at
Hmm.
least we push back and say, okay, where's the substantiation? And if we like it, okay, fine, then you can make the claim. So we are a source of information. We are not a guide for self medication. We're more of a science organization. We believe that people should and could use herbs responsibly. And, you know, one of our mantras is you have to use things responsibly. And so, therefore, self medication excuse me, to us at ABC, self-medication requires self-education.
Mm,
If you're going to
sure.
self-medicate, you better educate, and you got to use reliable, competent, responsible sources of information. And it's often
Mhm.
on the internet very challenging to distinguish between what's real and what's not, or what's got what's trying to how people are trying to get their hands in your pocket.
Well, I think that goes back to my original question on that. Then, we have the average consumer who may only have a short amount of time to educate themselves. But they I don't know, they know skull cap is something that they want to try to introduce. And they're going to look at some extract, or they're going to look at some sort of a way of imbibing that. I How do they know what they're getting? How do they know if they go into their local health store? How do they know what they're getting is
Well,
right?
yeah, and good question, and hopefully the health food store, which is where people used to be able to get most of their herbs, not anymore.
Mhm,
Nowadays, they didn't have the internet back, when I started going. I first went to a health food store in 1968 when I became a vegetarian, looking
mhm,
for items to, and that's how I got into herbs by looking at all these herb teas on the shelf. And I bought a book
mhm,
called The Herbalist by Joseph Meyer, who, started an herb company in the United States in 1910. That herb company's
mhm.
still going. I think what we're talking about here is people going to health food stores to get herbal
Yeah.
products. The health food store owner or the health food store manager is a kind of a gatekeeper. They're
Mhm,
like the guardians at the gate. The responsibility is on the store owner or the chain buyer or the manager of the store to help ensure that the products in that store are the best quality available. And when it comes to supplements and herbs, that they're high quality and that they're authentic. And let me make sure that everybody understands. There's a lot, as I said before, there are many companies that are very authentic, run by responsible owners and managers who
mhm.
really care about the quality of the ingredients,
Yeah.
processing, and the packaging, and the labeling, and the marketing. And ultimately, they care about the consumer's experience, a
Mhm.
positive consumer. Lots of them. This industry is full of a lot of good people. The
Right.
problem is, as they say, there's always a bad apple in the barrel, and there's lots of barrels.
Mhm.
That's the problem. You ask for advice. I don't usually give advice. I go by the old saying that what they say about advice. A wise person doesn't need it, and a fool won't heed it. So what's the point? Uh, so, but I don't advise people. If I do advise anybody, I said, buyer beware. But at the same time, there's a lot you can trust and you can have confidence in companies that you've had a relationship with,
Mhm.
or that you can ask your if you have a health professional that is like a naturopath or an integrative or functional medicine physician,
Right.
that's or an herbalist that's qualified, a qualified herbalist, like an AHG herbalist,
Mhm.
etc. There's a lot of good people that know a lot about products that you can get a lot of information from. But just
Right.
going out there on the internet and just trying to buy something off the top of, just because it looks good, and marketing may or may not be a good idea. It depends on the
Right.
product.
Right. Right. Well, and there's always the option, like we say here, grow it yourself, right? Learn, like you were talking about earlier, learn everything you can about it, learn how to make it.
Yeah.
And then you have a really good understanding of not only the plant, but how it's processed and whether or not it's going to work for you.
Well, it's a good idea. Some people herbalists say you should become an expert on 5 or 6 herbs and just really, that you have an interest in. Become an expert.
Sure.
Learn about the clinical research on it because there's ways you can find summaries. At the American Botanical Council, we have a thing called Herb Clip on our website for our
Hmm.
members. And Herb Clip are 2 and 3 page summaries of clinical literature which mentions the brand in the clinical research trial and the company that makes it whenever possible. We don't just say ginger or garlic or ginseng. We talk about, well, which extract of garlic was that? Which extract of ginger?
Mm,
What company's product? Because herbs are so chemically complex. There's so many chemicals in herbs and stuff like that. One person's special extract that there's a clinical study on, or multiple clinical studies on, may
mhm.
not work the same way as some generic stuff that you get off the shelf, or it might, depending on the situation. So we always try, and we've been leaders for over 30 years in identifying as carefully and as detailed as possible what each clinical study is on. And by the way, in September of 2025, September 15th in 2025,
Mhm.
less than 2 months from now, we're going to publish our 10,000th herb clip. So
Really?
we've been
Wow.
publishing summaries on clinical literature and
Mhm.
scientific literature on herbs for over 30 years. And we're going to hit number 10,000 coming up. And
Mhm.
by the way, also, was talking about our adulterants program a few moments ago. We're going to publish before the end of this year our 100th peer reviewed publication in the area of
Wow.
adulteration and fraud, which are freely accessible on the internet for anyone who wants it. Any company, any laboratory, any government, any researcher, any health professional, any
Mhm.
consumer who wants that information on adulteration and fraud on the adulteration program. All you have to do is register on our site at herbalgram.org, and that information is all free. We
That's
also
amazing.
we also have a huge web page on sustainability and conservation and regenerative agriculture that we just introduced last week. That we've taken all the articles in Herbalgram over the last 40 years and put them all in one place on to dealing with conservation and sustainability of medicinal and aromatic plants. And all
Mm.
that information is available. All people have to do is register to get that information. And they'll also get a free newsletter that we send out every month called Beer, with two R's, Botanical Environmental Educational uh, Research Report,
Mhm.
put together by Joseph Brinkman, who's a world class, well renowned expert. You know, you're nodding your head. You know
I
Joseph,
know.
right?
Yes. Yes.
He's
Absolutely.
well, so Joseph is chairman of the board of the American Botanical Council. He had, I think,
Mhm.
40-year career at the traditional medicinals. And
Mhm.
Joseph's one of the leading people in the world who's knowledgeable about conservation and sustainability related issues
Mhm.
on herbs and medicinal and aromatic plants. And so he's curating a new newsletter called Beer that puts out summaries and commentary on all the research that's being published worldwide in this area, including government publications and all kinds of stuff. It's a brand new project. We just started it at ABC, and I've talked to Stephen Yeager at
Mhm.
Mountain, very interested in it as well.
Yeah.
So we've got all kinds of stuff going on. We have, we're a nonprofit organization, American Botanical Council at herbalgram.org. We got a bunch of different buckets. Much of the information we have is freely available to consumers. Some of it requires registration. Some of it requires membership. It depends. We're a member-based organization. That's how we fund the organization,
Mhm.
and here to help increase the quality of information that people can use so they can make responsible choices for natural health care.
Yeah. Well, we love ABC here. Obviously, we're huge supporters of everything that you do.
Thank you.
And yeah, we I mean, we wouldn't be around if it wasn't for organizations like you. That's just the way it is.
I
And the work that you're doing and the work that you've done. I mean, I was thinking about it earlier when you were talking, and you really you're in the ground floor of modern herbalism. Like you got in at that time, right? And it's like you've seen it all, you know.
Well, I've
It's
seen. I don't know if I've seen it all. I've seen a lot, and it's been over 50 years, and I'm looking forward to the next 50.
yeah. Absolutely. We are as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
and I appreciate, the approach of everything is free because we're obviously uh big proponents of free herbalism. That's what we're all about. And we're so excited that to be able to partner with, the ABC and everything that you're doing, and to help to promote this, because this is for us, this is what it's all about.
well, thank you for that. And I consider you, as I mentioned before, I consider Mountain Rose to be one of the members of the responsible members of the herb industry. There's a
I
whole area
appreciate that.
ability. And there's a
Yeah.
lot of people. There's a lot. I mean, we focus on some of the downside and some of the dark side, unfortunately, because that's
Mhm.
something that we feel compelled to do. But at the same time, there's a lot of good people, including the folks at Mountain Rose, that are shining a light in the right direction. With
Yeah.
good quality and caring about your customers and their experience.
Yeah. Well,
So
we
thank
appreciate
you.
that. Yeah. So, well, hey, this was super fun. I think that we could have a part 2 on this because you're obviously a just a wealth of knowledge when it comes to herbalism, when it comes to, especially the science behind herbalism, which I get pretty excited about. I'm very a science-based person, and I really like that. Although the folk side of it is really interesting as well, because I feel like they blend so well together.
They
You
do.
know, it's like, oh yeah, they actually knew what that herb was for, even though they weren't scientifically testing it. They just understood, and I always find that pretty exciting. But
Yeah,
yeah, I think that, yeah, part two with you would be fantastic, and we could kind of maybe delve a little deeper into some of the science behind what the American Botanical Council is doing, and that sort of thing. So
I graciously and gratefully accept your offer.
awesome, awesome. Well, hey, thank you so much for your time, and working through our little technical glitches that we had. But I think end of the day, that was a pretty good conversation. So pretty
I
excited.
appreciate it. Thanks for including me in your list of people that you talk to, and
Absolutely.
I'm glad I finally made the cut.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. Well, you have a wonderful day, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate it
Okay.
very much.
Thank you.